Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Fraud Squad. This episode may mark the beginning of something completely new for this channel, and that's storytelling. Who doesn't like a good story? Since I've started this YouTube channel, I've had so many people reach out with their stories of them getting scammed or all kinds of other crazy stuff. I've had some really insane, crazy, interesting stories sent to me since I've started this channel. Now that I have a ton of them, I've been able to go through them and really decipher which ones would make good storytelling for YouTube. And today I bring to you one of those episodes. So sit back, relax, get a hot cup of coffee or a hot tea or some cider. It has to be a hot beverage. Get a hot beverage, relax, and listen to this insane story. I mean, this is an insane story. But if you like this type of content, please like the video and consider subscribing, but let's get into this. I have to tell you about a man from Boston named Alex Clements. This guy went through some serious stuff. It's one of these situations that really just makes you think, wow, people can find themselves in some crazy situations, and that's exactly what happened to Alex. This all happened about 5 to 6 years ago. He's from Boston, regular average guy. He works at a bar in Boston. He makes just enough for him to get by. He's about 24 years old at the time of telling the story, and it's him and his mom. When I say him and his mom, I mean it's literally only him and his mom. They came from Syria, war-torn Syria, to Boston because they're like, family died in a crazy explosion. It was literally just them. They were immigrants, or refugees would be like a better way to put it. But anyway, they're legally living in Boston at the time. He's a bartender. His mom sits him down one day and says, "Son, I have breast cancer." She was feeling some pain in her left breast and whatever. She went to the doctor. They didn't have great coverage. She didn't have a good job, but she paid the money, went out of pocket, got the test done, and it showed that it was in her breast. It was relatively small, but they think it had actually spread to her lymph nodes. And that's really where, you get all kinds of other problems when the cancer spreads. But she needed treatment. She had cancer. And this is really out of the blue. Like the day before, they were like, just chilling, eating dinner. She hadn't mentioned that she went to the doctor. She didn't want to freak him out because apparently he was a bit of a hypochondriac, but she had cancer. They end up doing some more tests and whatnot, and they find out that it is very treatable, but she would need to be on chemo. She would need to have a lumpectomy to get the actual tissue removed. They did finding out, he says here, that it did not spread to her lymph nodes yet, but they had to act fast. She had to get the treatment. Apparently she had a little bit of insurance. He didn't specify where from, but maybe through her job they had a little bit of insurance, but it wasn't nearly even close to enough to covering the treatment costs that she would need to go through all the chemo and all the lumpectomy and all that stuff. So she needed all this treatment, but she couldn't afford it. This is like a classic situation that many Americans, many people around the world find themselves in. Specifically, it's a big complaint in America. I'm not digging the American healthcare system, okay? I'm in Canada and we have so many problems. I'm not even gonna get started. Let's just continue with the story. So as I said before, he wasn't making a ton of money. He was a bartender. He was barely making enough for himself to survive, but he's like, okay, it's just me and my mom. She's taking care of me. She's not gonna be able to work that much going forward because of the chemo and whatnot, and who knows where her path leads at this point, right? So he's like, I gotta get another job. And they ended up doing the math and they figure out exactly how much they would need to make roughly. I mean, there's rough estimates when it comes to cancer treatment in terms of what it would cost a month, but they need to make a lot more money between the two of them. And she really wasn't that young. Like, she's in her early 60s and obviously she has cancer. So he really took the burden on himself to find another job. And he did that. He went and he actually said, he mentioned he got a job at a big fast food chain. So he got a job at McDonald's. So now he's working 2 jobs, none of them really paying that great, and it's still not adding up to enough. They were able to start the chemo, and basically, again, relatively simple math, they were going to determine that they were going to run completely out of all their savings and all the extra money he was getting before like month 2 had even started of chemotherapy. So he had to like come up with another plan fast. They didn't have much assets to sell. They didn't really have anything, right? They were just regular people. They don't have a ton of stuff. They don't have a lot of assets. So he starts looking for another job again. And at the McDonald's he was working at before he started this next job, which is about to start, they had like a bulletin board on the entryway in McDonald's where people could put up like local flyers and things like that. So he saw a flyer for a job. It was an insurance salesman job, and it was at home, and it paid commission. That way he could kind of be at home with his mom and whatever. He again did the math and thought that this would be good. On the flyer said that you could earn up to whatever X amount per month, and it ended up being more than enough for him to cover the cancer treatment. So he gives him a call and he does the interview, and it does really, really well. He does really, really well, and they hire him. They end up hiring him. So now he's going to be selling, it's a type of life insurance. It's very commission based. You basically do it however you want. It's just commission based. So you're kind of an agent. I think it's kind of up to you to market yourself. Most of this was done through telemarketing. So getting leads, calling people, selling them insurance over the phone. The company had references. They had a really nice website. They had everyone that he spoke to on the phone was really great. So they actually sent him to training too. It was like an online training seminar, and they paid him for the training. So he was really excited to start selling this insurance. And he took to this really, really quickly. He was an insanely good insurance salesman. The way he described it to me was like that scene from Wolf of Wall Street where he's selling the guy that investment over the phone, and they're all just laughing, and he was just naturally gifted. That's what I had in my head, at least when he was telling me this story, when he was at least typing me this story. There was a lot of communication back and forth with him on this, but that's what I thought. So he's really insanely good at selling insurance. He's making sales left and right within his first week, and he starts they have like an online portal, and he can see what his commission sales are, and it's way more than enough to cover the next couple months of chemo. So this is a dream come true for him. Within the month, he was like caught up on his bills. He had a little bit of savings. He paid for all his mom's cancer stuff, and he put money away to pay for it for the next coming months. And he was just making a lot of money, more than he ever made in his entire life. He was making tons of money, and things were looking good at this point. This went on for a couple months. So he's rolling in the dough. He's selling a bunch of insurance. It's going great. And his mom was nearing the end of her chemo treatments. They did the lumpectomy. She was on chemo to kill the rest of the cells. And I'm not super familiar with cancer, but she was on like her last couple rounds of chemo. Everything was looking good, but then they found cancer elsewhere. They found that the cancer had showed up in her bladder. It was just this roller coaster, right? It's like, cancer. Oh, how am I going to pay for it? Oh, I got this awesome job. Okay, we're paying the bills and everything's great, and the cancer's looking good. Oh, now we got cancer somewhere else. So whatever, they go through all the shenanigans again of, paying for all these tests and going through all the doctors and all the back and forth and whatnot. And they end up making a treatment plan to treat this new bladder cancer that she had. And the way he tells me this story is that months go by. She's on the treatment. Everything's responding relatively well. They didn't do any sort of surgery for this one. I think it was only chemo, but like whatever. I don't know how long the chemo is. He didn't specify how long this round of chemo was, but she was on more chemo, and it was like a long time was going by, and there was just medical bill and test and whatever. This was definitely a more expensive type of cancer to treat, allegedly, he says. They needed a lot more money for the tests or the treatment. I don't know. He doesn't really specify, but thank God for this job that he had. Thank God he was so good at selling insurance. Who knew that he was so good at selling insurance? But that was literally at this point keeping his mother alive. So he's keeping that going, and by this time in his career with insurance, he had sold hundreds and hundreds of clients. He doesn't really have a lot of communication with his previous clients. As I said, he's just, gets them in the door, sells it to them, and then they kind of have their own system to deal with like the ongoing maintenance of a client. But he gets this call from this guy. We'll call him Gary Hansen, and he was angry at Alex because he said, hey, whatever, I'm trying to like make a claim on my insurance policy. I can't get through to anyone. I'm getting the runaround. No one's answering my calls anymore. They told me I should call this number and that number, and nothing's happening. And, I'm just not getting any answers. Turns out the guy's wife had passed away, and he was trying to get his insurance policy to cover the funeral expense. So obviously he's caught off guard. He's like, okay, Gary, I'm sorry. Let me look into it. Let me just relax. I'm going to look into it for you. I'll get back to you. I'll take it under my responsibility. I sold it to you. Let me look into it. It's the company I work for, so I'll get a hold of somebody. We'll figure out what's going on. So he reaches out to his boss, we'll call Victor, and tells him the story. Victor's like, no problem. Give me the guy's information. I'll look into it. Alex goes on with his day. Another week or two goes by. Alex is selling insurance. Everything's fine. Status quo, still doing the chemo treatments. He gets another call from a previous customer that he had sold insurance to, saying the same thing. Whatever. I don't think it was a death this time, but they were trying to get the insurance policy that they had claimed, or at least get some information, and no one was calling them back. So he does the same thing. Calls his boss, Victor, says, hey, this lady's having the same issue. Victor says, no problem. Give me your information. I'll take care of it. And over the next couple of days, he gets 3 more calls from people saying basically the exact same thing. I'm trying to find information on my policy. I can't get through to anybody. I'm trying to make a claim on my policy. I can't get through to anybody. So he tells his boss, and his boss is like, yeah, no problem. They're just really busy right now. I'll handle it. Don't worry about it. If they call you, just send them to me. no problem. And at this point, it's so many people that he's asking his boss, like, hey, what's going on? Is there something I should be aware of? He's like, no, they're just busy. So Alex that night ends up calling the number on one of the, whatever the term sheets that he ends up getting them signed, or like part of the contract, they have like what the actual claim number is. So he gives it a call, disconnected. So he started to feel like something was definitely wrong at this point. He had this like sinking feeling in his gut, we're just like, okay, something's a little fishy here. Suddenly everything feels wrong. So he just starts to investigate what's going on with the company. So as I said, he already made the phone call. It was a disconnected line. So he actually calls another sales rep that he knows, signs up for some insurance himself. And before he gives any of their information, he goes and just tries to see what the contract that she sends out, and it turns out it was a totally different contract that she was sending out than the one he was sending out. And again, on that contract, the number didn't work for the claims department. And all this was done online. So he had a company email, and he looked at they used something similar to DocuSign. I don't know if it was DocuSign, but it was some sort of online PDF signing. So he visits that link, and he was familiar with that because it was something that he had researched when he signed up with the company, and it's something that he was just familiar with through demoing it to people he was selling the insurance to. And it was all down. It hadn't worked. So he reaches out to his boss, says, hey, what's going on here? I noticed that our website's down. His boss is like, no, we just changed the domain. Don't worry about it. And gave him the new domain, and then everything was there. It was under just a different domain name, whatever. He said there was some sort of website issue. So he logs in, sees all the stuff there, no problem, puts it to the back of his mind. Throughout that week, he gets a couple more calls. He makes some more sales, but he gets a couple more calls from people saying the same thing. There's something going on with the claims department, so he refers them to the new website, and then they're saying that they can't log in, and when they do log in, their information's not there. So he ends up actually getting his client's login information, logging in through their portal, and seeing that the documents they had signed were not there at all. They had no record of even having the insurance. And the more he dug into this, the worse it got. The domain had changed a couple more times. He did a Whois search, found out that it was hosted somewhere in Russia. And it wasn't until this moment, this is a key piece of information I specifically left out until this point, because I'm assuming now you're starting to suspect what's going on, but he wasn't skeptical until now that they had been sending him envelopes full of cash as his commission payments. He was getting paid commission. Everything was adding up to what they said it would be, but it was in envelopes full of cash. I mean, whatever, cash is legitimate, but I don't know. I certainly would have been skeptical if I was getting paid in envelopes full of cash that were dropped off in his mailbox. So one night he Googles the company name, and he finds a Reddit thread which basically says this company is a scam. And he was mentioned by name in that Reddit post saying, Alex sold me the scam policy. He doesn't even answer his phone, blah, blah, blah. Turns out they had actually redirected his number. So the number that they had on the website wouldn't go to him anymore or whatever. They were messing with all the technology of things. The domain names kept changing. The numbers kept changing. So he really didn't have any idea what was going on. He was just a really good salesman. And then now he was realizing that he was a telemarketer scammer that was selling people fraudulent insurance. His mind was just blown, and then all these pieces started to fit together. The cash payments, the names of the people he was dealing with, the accents that they had, the vague nature of the excuses they had for why people weren't able to claim or to make their claims. They always said it was some banking issue because whatever, they were like a broker, and then there was a banking issue, whatever. There was always just some excuse, and it was all kind of piecing together. But he was very sure at this point that what he was selling was fraudulent insurance. He would sell people insurance and it wouldn't actually exist. They wouldn't have anything. So now he's at a crossroads. He doesn't have an education. The best other job he can get is fast food or something along those lines. Not going to be making much money. So what does he do? Does he let his mom struggle? The way he explains it to me, there was no way that she could afford these chemo treatments. There's no other way that he could. This is it. It's either literally life or it's a potentially life or death situation. Like, do I keep scamming people and ruining their lives, or do I keep doing this, get as much money as I can, and potentially save my mother's life? I honestly don't know what I would do, and he didn't know either. He did some research on these scams, and usually they're tied to some sort of mob, some sort of terrorist organization, right? So he didn't really know who he was dealing with. The whole thing honestly just kind of came crashing down on him, and now he's scared. He's scared to quit. Does he know too much? Are they onto him? What does he do? And besides the training This job was 100% commission based. So if he just stopped making sales, something would be fishy. He wouldn't get any money. But then, he's been making many sales a day. All of a sudden, one day it stops, but he's still whatever on the clock, or however that system works. They're going to notice something, and he legitimately was in fear for his life. He's like, do I call the police? What do I do? What do I do in this situation? And even if he does call the police, then he's not going to be getting that money to make his mom's cancer payments for her treatment, right? So he thinks about it. He takes a couple of days off, lets Victor know, hey, whatever, I'm going on vacation. I'll be back Tuesday. Needs a couple days to think. It was an impossible choice, but he made it. He made the choice. He chose to keep scamming people to keep his mom alive. That's the way he saw it. The way he saw it in his head is, if I don't stop this, there's no other way for me to earn money, and my mom's not going to be able to finish her chemo treatments, and that's it. That's right. That's it for my mom. Whether you agree or disagree with that statement, whether that's true or false, whatever, that's what he had in his head. So he decided, no, I gotta get her through the chemo treatment. As soon as she's done and she's free of cancer, I'll quit. He didn't know exactly how he was going to handle it, because he was pretty sure it was tied to some sort of mafia or terrorist organization. It wasn't good. What he was reading online in terms of where this money goes was not good. But he decided, no, I'm going to continue to scam people and save my mother's life. And that's exactly what he did for months. And he tells me he had hundreds more victims. And it got so hard for him to do, because he would call up these elderly people, and he would call up people that just lost whatever. Everyone's got sob stories. He would really start to realize the damage that he was doing, because now he was selling it, but now he knew he was the bad guy, and he knew that these people would never be able to make the claim on their insurance. He was selling them false hope. It was just a complete scam. So it was really, really hard on him mentally. He really felt like he was between a rock and a hard place. And if he stopped, his mom would die. And his mental health just took a nosedive. Like, he wasn't eating. He could not sleep. He had nightmares all the time. He says to this day, he still has nightmares. He can't sleep. He'll die with this guilt of scamming all these people. So months and months and months go by. He says that he sold hundreds of fraudulent insurance policies to these people. His mother's cancer was gone. They did a bunch of tests, came back negative. At this point, he had a little bit of money saved up, so he's like, I want you to send her for every scan possible. I want to make sure there's not one molecule of cancer in her body. So they did everything, and he was thorough. And she got a clean bill of health back, and she was off the chemo at this point. She was starting to grow her hair back, and she was feeling better. She had no idea what was going on. So once he had the final bill of health with his mom, he now had to quit the job, and he ended up telling his mom that he was going to quit, and she's like, why? Are you crazy? Why would you quit? You're making tons of money. What are you, stupid? You wasted all the money, or I shouldn't say wasted, but you spent all the money on the chemo treatments. Up to this point, you barely got to save anything. Why would you quit now that you can actually not pay for the chemo and save money? Like, you're stupid. She could not understand why he'd want to quit this job, and he didn't want to tell her. He didn't want to be an accomplice. He didn't want her to be tied in any way possible to this scam he was pulling. And he just said, look, it's really boring. He made up a bunch of excuses, and it's just not what I want to do. And he'd go back to the bartender. He was happier. He had to completely lie to her. She thought that he was completely insane. Of course, who wouldn't at that point? So he texts his boss one day, Victor, hey, look, he actually said that I'm going to be moving soon. My mom and I are going back somewhere in the Middle East. I'm not going to be able to work for you. It was a pleasure. And Victor says, no problem. It was a pleasure having you work for us. You're a great worker. Come back anytime. So it looked like everything was relatively clean. His boss didn't seem too upset, but he was paranoid, because at this point he was almost 100% sure it was tied to some sort of mob. So he quits, and he cannot relax. He cannot relax. He's still tense. He's still not eating. His mom's noticing that he's losing a bunch of weight, and he just doesn't look healthy. He's pale. He's frail. He's looking over his back all the time. He thinks that the mob's after him. He thinks that his life's literally in danger. But the police end up finding out the whole thing was a fraud, and they knew that he wasn't involved at all, and they actually got everyone back their money, and all the bad people went to jail, and that's it. No, that's not what happened. What actually happened, he never heard a thing. He read the news every single day. Never read anything on a scam bust for fraudulent insurance. The websites that he used to visit that had all the insurance and the company name, there was nothing to be found on the internet. There was no websites. The phone numbers didn't work. There was no record of anything. He never heard from anybody. He never got a call from the police. He never got another call from another client. Never heard a peep. And this is years ago now. This is years ago, and he's still alive. He does not tell me where he currently lives. He did not tell me his real name, but he lives with the guilt every day. He says he's a regular person. He's working a completely legitimate job now. It's an office job. He's completely does everything above board, but he cannot live down the guilt because he knows he ruined people's lives. And he says he still goes to therapy. He still has nightmares. He still wakes up with nightmares about scamming people, and he just feels guilty. He's just got this immense burden on his soul, and he said, I'm gonna have to live with that the rest of my life. And he's still a relatively young guy. He's still got a lot of life left to live, and he honestly doesn't know how he's gonna make it through it. And he's never told his mom, never told any of his friends. You know, as far as they were concerned, he was an insurance salesman, and that's it. So he just lives with this. So it felt like when I was talking to him, it was nice for him to kind of get this out because he's never really told anybody. That's the impression I got. So I hope it was somewhat therapeutic for him. But what do you think? I'm very, very, very curious to see what everyone thinks here. Did he do the right thing? Did he do the wrong thing? What would you have done? I honestly don't know what I would have done. I truly don't know. I'm leaning towards scamming people and saving my mom. I'm leaning towards that, but I really don't know. I don't know. Not saying I'm a good person here, but I'm just saying if it came between my mom and scamming some people, I'd probably pick my mom every time. It's a tricky situation. It's really hard to say, but I thought that was a crazy story. I mean, that's like, what a crazy predicament to find yourself in. So let me know what you would have done. I'm so curious. Please comment. Please comment. I need to know. Like this video if you like this new style of video. I think I'm going to do a lot more of these. I have so many other crazy stories that I want to tell you guys. So if you liked it, please let me know. Subscribe if you like this sort of content. You want to stay up to date with all sorts of fraud stories and stuff like that, and current frauds and scams that are going on. We want to keep you guys informed and keep you safe. Visit our store if you want to buy some merch. Really helps support the channel. I'm wearing some right now. Can you zoom in through that? This is a terrible angle for this. Whatever. We got tons of merch. I'm wearing my Lions hat because the Lions won last week. I know you used to see me in my Fraud Squad hat, but you're just gonna have to deal with it, okay? And that was it. So let me know. Let me know if Alex was the bad guy or the good guy. Let me know what you would have done. Thank you for watching. This has been another episode of Fraud Squad. Stay vigilant, stay safe, stay happy, stay whatever. Hide your kids, hide your wife, and hide your husband too, because they scamming everybody out here.